Welcome to the I Love Coaching podcast, where we believe coaching solves everything.
Hi, Randy. Welcome to the I Love Coaching podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for being here. So let's go into you first. Right? Before we go into all the fun aspects of the coaching world that you and I can talk about for hours, who's Randy Pate? You were born, and then what happened?
Love sports. Growing up, played a lot of sports. Buddy here.
That's Charlie.
Hello, Charlie.
Come here. By the way, this is totally organic. Yep.
Yep. So
Charlie.
So
come here.
But basically, grew up playing sports. Gravitated towards basketball. Started playing tennis late. Ended up. I was in a neighborhood with a lot of older kids, and tennis was the only thing that I could win in the neighborhood. So kind of went that direction, went to voluntaries, and ended up playing basketball and tennis in college.
Nice.
Wanted to be a basketball coach, but basically you got to start as the assistant JV coach in basketball, and tennis you can just have your own academy. And so I started an academy, was going to do that until I could get an opportunity in basketball or get a real job, and didn't get either one of those. So I'm still still running the tennis academy.
Well, who needs a real job when you actually have the track record of success that you have? So let's fast forward to this past graduation season. So how long have you had your now academy? And we'll just go right to the end. What is the, I think you just shared with us before we started, what is that track record of success?
So for 35 years, every kid that's graduated from our academy has been offered a college scholarship.
Wow.
And that's probably what we're most proud of, and that's why people would move to Charleston to train with us, because they have aspirations of playing in college. We've had few players play in the pros, and we have a pro program, but the kind of meat and potatoes of what we do is help kids with their college dreams.
Gotcha.
That's what we specialize in.
So we've got 35 years, college scholarships for all that graduate. And now here's a plug. My kids go to Randy Pate Tennis Academy, and they absolutely love it.
So hopefully the streak doesn't stop
That's
now.
right. Well, they are the Roach kids. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So let's back up. So you're at Bolletary. You're playing both basketball and tennis, right?
I went there just for tennis.
Just for tennis, okay.
I had a rotator cuff injury, was out for 8 months, and they let me play basketball because I just couldn't serve. And basically I played public school ball in Raleigh, North Carolina, growing up. But in Florida, I got to play private school. So anyway, I averaged 31 points a game my senior year, and I went down there for tennis and make All-State in basketball, but not tennis. And my parents wondering what in the world they spend all this money for me to go to this famous tennis school, and I'm down there playing basketball. But anyway, it was a great experience, and I got to play tennis at the end of it, and then I wanted to do both in college and played both in college. And,
wow.
That which was my dream, because I love sports. So, that was kind of my dream existence in college, being able to do both.
That's incredible. So now let's go back to the future again, or at least right now. So we did Bolletary, became a basketball player, and then tennis player at the same time after you recovered. And now we're 35 years removed, or at least probably even more than that.
A little more.
Yeah, a little more than that. Though the impact that you've had now on so many, right? The lives that you've directed and you've changed. If you look back on it and you say, what an incredible journey. If it were to stop today, what does that make you as a coach? What's that make you feel?
So the relationships along the way have been unbelievable. Like, just our big day is our signing day. So kids will put in 8-10 years, and you're with them. We see them a lot of times more than their parents do.
Yes.
And So when you get to that day where they actually get to sign a scholarship for their next stage in life, it's the most fulfilling thing that happens. And now I'm a father of four, and now two of my two oldest are now old enough, and they've had that experience as well. So I've experienced it both as a coach and a parent, and that there's not a day that I have not wanted to go to work.
Yeah.
I love what I do. The kids, just helping them. Tennis is a sport you get punched in the gut 1,000 times along the way. Helping them, get back up, get in the saddle, train harder, so that whatever held you back today will not hold you back tomorrow.
Right.
Something else might, but it won't. But we're constantly, keep overcoming challenges to get to a place that when they're really excited about where they're going to go to college, they're happy about the education, the teammates, competing for national titles. It's really exciting.
Yeah, and I'll tell you from my vantage point, and even with Addison and Amelia that are both there, that signing day is something that they'd never experienced before prior to being there, and it is something that they talk about all the time.
Yeah.
And not only they talk about it all the time, but now they pick their schools of where they want to sign.
Right.
So now they get to visualize, they get to start to manifest, they get to do all those things. That's really, really cool. Let's go into your specific path of becoming a coach, right? So we had basketball, we had tennis. I can't remember the words that you used, but you didn't have to get a real job, right? Because you get to do what you're passionate about all the time. So what was that path? What did that path look like?
So basically, when I got out of college, I got offered the head coaching job in Statesville, North Carolina.
Okay.
And I had other offers, but not as the head coach. So I'm, 21, 22 years old, and I got to be the guy right out of college, and that was appealing to me. And so I started there, and then there was a gentleman at the rec department, John Bullard, who, basketball player. He and I played in the men's league together, and he said, "Hey, would you like to set up an academy on our public courts and just do your own thing?" And I was like, "Yes, I would like to." And Statesville had never had a ranked player in 20 years. It was just kind of a sleepy little town of like maybe 19,000, 15,000. And anyway, but there's not a lot to do. So so the kids that got into it loved it. There weren't a lot of distractions. They didn't have a ton of other opportunities. And that's kind of where it started. I mean, we started on the public courts there, and I think we had, within our first 3 years, we had our first national champion.
Wow.
The first one to ever come out of Statesville. And we ended up having, I want to say, 3 or 4 more over the 10 or 12 years that we were there. But it was, I really enjoyed it. It was kind of a underdog situation. No one had ever heard of anyone coming out of Statesville. And I embraced the role because, I was basically, even though Bollettieri's would be the highest pedigree, I was injured the whole time there. Right. So I was this basketball guy in a tennis world. So I love being the underdog, love trying to overcome people that would be considered to have more advantages, more courts, better facilities, more coaches. So, and the kids embraced it, and it was really fun. Yeah. And, and that's kind of where it started. And I want to say 4 years later was our first kid that we sent to college. Wow. And, and then it just started from there, and it became a thing. Then it became a thing of pressure because most academies, it's about your best player. You highlight the best player in your program. For us, it's just the opposite because we when somebody comes with really low rankings, we got to help that person get a scholarship.
Right.
So the best players is actually easier for that. Obviously, they want to get some really good schools, so that's tough. But just kind of taking on each person's situation and really embracing the challenge of it, of that has been, it's been challenging and engaging for 35 years.
Right. I love the underdog approach because, again, you're always fighting your way up, and it's just it's some kids get that target on their back, right? And a lot of kids like to work their way up. That's a neat visual there. So let's talk about how do you view coaches? Because now, how many coaches do you have on your staff right now? I can't remember. 15, yeah. So as you look for coaches, and as now we'll just call you the head coach. I mean, your name is on the building, your name's on the van, your name's on the cars. By the way, I gotta get me one of those stickers I can put on my car. Yeah. How do you view coaches? What do you look for specifically when you're bringing a coach into your academy?
Yeah.
Are there certain characteristics, certain traits? What do you look for?
So one of the best things that I ever heard when I first started, there was a legendary coach at Clemson, Coach Chuck Creasy, who's now at the College of Charleston, ironically. But back then, he's in the Tennis Hall of Fame. Clemson was the best in the ACC, and he came to Statesville when I first started. And anyway, he had a couple of books he'd published. He signed books, but for giving credibility to this, guy who's just doing something at a public park. But the one thing they said that stuck with me, that I make sure that if somebody works for me, they have this. They have to understand when you're dealing with a child or someone's child, no one cares what you know until they know that you care.
Love it.
And that's kind of been a simple motto that we have, and with coaches, because in tennis, you have a lot of prima donnas, or what I would call show ponies.
Yeah.
They want to come out, parade, show how good they were or who they were, and it's about them rather than the kids or the students.
Right.
And so weeding out the guys who truly care about the kids and have a passion for it. And the guys that work for me, and you've certainly met them, you see they're tennis nerds. They love it. They get just as jacked about signing day as I do. And if you don't get jacked about it, you shouldn't work for us.
Right.
Because we put in so many hours of phone calls to the kids, the parents, meetings that are not part of your normal work week. If you don't enjoy that part of it, you're not going to be successful at the high end of what it takes.
Right.
And I'm super lucky in Charleston that we have more coaches. When I was in North Carolina, I could usually find one. I've had different ones over the years, but rarely, if they were that good, then they could be the head guy somewhere else and make a lot more money. So it was so hard to find. So I had to be way more back then. Now I've learned to be trusting because we've got some great guys that do an amazing job, and so now it's a little bit easier. But back then, I was pretty much had to do everything with everybody, and I wasn't great at trusting as much as I am now.
Right. So we've got, how do you view the role of the coach? So selfless for sure. You'd say selfless is number one.
Well, I would say inspired by their students. It just, like, when you go out, they genuinely get excited when they help somebody. If they're just feeding balls, oh, great shot, nice shot. The kids see through it, I'll see through it, the parents see through it. Right. They're not going to make it. But, like, you can see that I feel like with all of our academy coaches, I mean, they hurt at night when one of their students isn't playing well or picks up a bad loss in the tournament.
Right.
And when they do something really well, they're shooting me text. We're communicating all the time about who's doing great, who's not, and but it's like a family. That like they want to be, they enjoy being a part of something to help kids that probably each of them have experienced along the way, like I did early on, that you just couldn't do it all by yourself.
Right.
You needed good people around you to really have the best chance. And I learned from these guys, and hopefully they learned something from me, and we're constantly trying to make each other better coaches, because each eye sees something, each set of eyes rather, sees something a little different. And so the more quality eyes we can get on the kids, the better chance we have to help them. And that's kind of our...
I absolutely love that. We have a saying inside of the I Love Coaching company that the coaches do three things. They educate, they motivate, and they confront. So in the tennis space, for a coach to confront, right, because that can be... Sometimes it's not easy to call someone out. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've been called out many times from many coaches about doing things the wrong way. What do you think is the philosophy in that space when you have a kid, an impressionable kid? I grew up in the Bobby Knight days, right? So confronting was not a problem for him. And I'm not even talking about generational stuff now, but just in general, from a coach's perspective, what do you think about confronting a student or a player, or even in our case, an entrepreneur? What do you think about that?
If you can't trust me for an honest opinion, there's thousands of people who will blow smoke and give you compliments.
Yeah.
So, and that's probably the largest role I have in the academy, because some of the coaches aren't comfortable with being as direct as I'll be. I'm kind of the big green ogre, so I just I'll take it head on,
right.
And whether you want to hear it or not, we certainly, when you deserve compliments, we'll absolutely get them. But for a lot of the coaches that I have, I'd say that's their biggest weakness. And in our space, just as I need coaches that are there to pick up the pieces when I've upset somebody, or on the organizational standpoint, I need somebody to really keep it together. Finding people who who are good at your deficiencies, that believe as much as you, and if you have qualities that help them be better, and just. With Chris Cagle, for instance, nicest guy in the world. In the past, people have taken advantage of that.
Sure.
I won't let that happen.
Right.
He won't say anything.
Right.
But I will.
Yep.
And Charlie, just Charlie's just the nicest guy in the world, and will work 100 hours a week if you don't stop him.
Right.
And so if somebody's taking advantage of that, then I'll try to step in, and in return, those guys know that sometimes my tone isn't great with the mothers at times, and they got to come. Well, what he really meant to say was, from the bottom of his heart, he didn't. It might not have come off, but they do a great job of helping in that regard. But kind of from the characteristic of, I try to put people in roles to be successful, and finding out, and we have a lot of different roles, so I know I'm not giving you a direct answer to what you're asking, but like when a coach comes in and I see that they can really help a certain area of the academy, I'm going to put them in that role.
Right.
Establish that role, give them the best chance for success, and that's an area that maybe we're pretty good at, but they can make us great at. Then we're better.
Right.
And then finding the different, what their traits are, and the thing that I would say is, if they care, you can find something that they can do to make you better. And so it's I would say on ours, there's not like everybody fits in a mold.
Right, yeah.
And I think if we did, we would not be as good by everybody doing the same thing, but really finding out what makes Martin special. He played on the tour.
Sure.
Putting him in positions where he can mentor some of our better players who have aspirations of playing after college. Just with each coach, it's kind of like that. Finding the coach, also, who do they inspire? Like different personalities respond to different things, and just like your son, absolutely, it does not bother him a bit if I yell at him. So he and I do great together. Other kids, if they're thin-skinned, they're crushed after a lesson.
Right, yeah.
They would be much better with Charlie or Chris. But having different personalities because every child is different, that they have somebody they can believe in. And on my side, it's somebody that I believe in as well, that give them the space to be who they are, and let the kids kind of gravitate to the coaches that really inspire them. So that was a long way of answering.
That was beautiful. One of the things that we talk about in our coaching world is, and I brought in a big entrepreneurial coach to coach even my coaches, and he said if your clients aren't getting off calls if they're not getting off calls with sweaty palms, you're not necessarily doing your job. Now, that's not to say that you need to be mean. That's not to say that. But what I have found is holding people accountable to their own goals is a coach's responsibility.
Yeah.
And if you have to educate, motivate, and confront in those spaces, you better do it.
Well, it's funny you said that, because we've probably had this conversation, but what we do is we have the kids make their goals.
Yep.
And then we agree on what it's going to take for them to have a chance to reach those goals. And then here's the deal. You get held accountable every day. You can step out. You can tell anytime, hey, I thought I wanted that, but if it takes this, I'm out. So they have the ability to step out at any time.
Right.
But until you do, no excuses. This is what you want, not what I want.
Right.
This is what you told us you want. We hold you accountable every day to get there, and just be true to yourself. Don't tell us one thing and do another.
Right.
And so that's kind of how we hold the kids accountable, and the expectation I have of the coaches as well. Right. That they've got to hold them accountable, or if they don't feel comfortable, then come tell me.
Yep. Exactly. It's funny you should say that, but we were just recording a promo of sorts today with our media company, and the question I had to answer was, what was some of the best advice a coach has ever given you? And I said it was my tennis coach, and it was that talk is cheap and actions are lethal. Right? You got to get out and you got to go do the work. Sure, you can say you want to be number one in the world all day long. Does your work ethic prove that that's what you really want to do? Does your effort match the vision? And if it doesn't, and so we in the entrepreneurial space say it all the time, does your calendar match your goals? And I'd say 75% of the time, it does not.
Right, yeah.
So we'll end with this. So what is some of the best advice you've ever received being coached in your space? So your advice, or someone that gave you coaching advice, and then what do you feel is some of the best advice you've ever given some of your coaches?
So on my part, I was truly blessed to just happenstance into great coaches. So, like Tony Roach would come to Raleigh for 1 week out of the year, and the pro at the club lived in my neighborhood. Okay. So he basically said if I would come out and hit with the players at Country Club, he would work with me privately for a week. So I would get to spend time with him. J.W. Eisenhower took me on as this late bloomer. They named the tennis facility NC State after J.W., and he's in the Hall of Fame. And then obviously got to go to Boletaries and study there in basketball. My basketball coach was actually a Bobby Knight disciple of, believe it or not. So just along the way, I had really strong influences. And I think the one common denominator, rather than giving the credit to one, was all of the successful, the ones that I had success under, held me accountable and pushed me and never let me get comfortable. If I was comfortable, I was underachieving. And they would push me to be more than I was comfortable doing. And I don't know that they ever put that in words, but kind of like you said, in actions. In actions, I got my butt chewed out.
Yeah, right.
Along the way, many times, and just learned that the easier path of resistance is do what they ask you the first time, rather than get embarrassed in front of everybody. You're still going to have to do it
Right.
if you want to succeed.
Yeah.
And then I guess kind of what we just talked about is, from my side, is I think my growth into having the kids make their own goals and then hold them accountable, rather than when I was in my 20s, I was telling everybody what they needed to do and how to do it, and I knew more than anybody, and then just kind of learned, you've got to listen and hear what they want to do, find what they're capable of doing, and then work as a team forward, and if they don't want to be pushed, then that's okay.
Right.
But you got to have the honest conversation. This probably isn't for you.
Right.
And be willing to let go instead of forcing a situation that won't work. And but never give up on somebody who is willing to work.
Right. Yeah, I love that. This is good. My biggest takeaway in all my notes right here is that whether it's entrepreneurial coaching, whether it's sports coaching, whether it's growth, everything lives and dies with accountability.
Yes.
Everything lives and dies with accountability. And we tell our clients all the time that if you could hold yourself accountable, you wouldn't need me, right? You wouldn't need to be on this call right now. So what we challenge everybody is have a high level of accountability. And if you're comfortable in your accountability, you better get new accountability, because that's not the right path to go down. Very good. So in ending here, how do people come find the Randy Pate Academy? How do they come learn more about whether you as a coach and leader, whether the actual academy? Where would you tell all of our listeners to go find you?
Well, they can go to the pateacademy.com, the website. Most of the kids that would come to our academy, they're tennis players, would know of us. And a lot of times what happens is, if they're very successful where they are, they won't come to us. So usually, people are at a point where they need something more if you don't live in the Charleston area. And that's kind of what we specialize in. But if you're in the Charleston area, we start with itty bitties, 4 years old. We have every step of what we call the collegiate pathway, and so, that's on the pateacademy.com. But it's what we like to do is we put you on the pathway. You can get off at any time and have a background in tennis that you can use the rest of your life. But what happens is, if you don't get on the pathway, it's not like you can jump on late in the game and have the same opportunities.
Right. I'll tell you right now, both of the kids, my kids that are in there, both Addison and Amelia, I mean, they are transforming as humans, right? And that's what I love most about it is they're great tennis players, and they're going to become even better under your tutelage. Though humans, and I tell them this all the time, you and I have had this conversation, my job is to make you the best adult, period. My job is to make sure that you understand values, character, authenticity, honesty, and that I'll tell you that truly is the culture that I've experienced from my kids being inside of your organization. So that's really, really neat.
Well, I would say culture is what we're the most proud of and what we fight the hardest to keep, and is obviously the quickest thing to lose if you don't. So I take that as a giant compliment, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, my
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Yeah, absolutely, my pleasure. Okay, everybody, that's been our conversation. Randy, thanks for coming in here. We'll definitely do this again because I have no doubt that this podcast will blow up. And we'll see you all next time.